Good morning, students. I hope you all are well and safe at your home. This video is for the students of class 9th, subject science, chapter number 15, that is improvement in food resources. It's your lecture number 5. Topics to be discussed in today's lecture are cattle farming and poultry farming. So let's start with today's lecture. Yesterday we discussed about animal husbandry, right? And there we discussed about various types of farming like cattle farming, poultry farming, fish production and beekeeping. So let's start with cattle farming today. Why this cattle farming is done? Cattle farming is done mainly for two purposes. What are those two purposes? First is for obtaining milk from dairy animals. That is the first purpose for which cattle farming is being done. And second purpose is for using the draught animals in agriculture and transport purposes. Right. So, for these two reasons, the cattle farming is being done. Now students, the question arises, what are dairy animals and draught animals? So let us discuss these two. Dairy animals. Milk producing females are called as dairy animals. Okay, the females which are involved in the production of milk, they are basically called as dairy animals. And the other name given to dairy animals is milch animals. So dairy animals and milch animals, one and the same thing. So now you understood the meaning of dairy animals. Second was draught animals. So what are draught animals? The animals used for farm labor, they are called as draught animals. Means the animals which are involved in agriculture and the transport purposes, they are called as draught animals. So are you clear about these two types of animals? So that's why the cattle farming is being done. Now, next point is about milk production. Milk production depends on lactation period. What is lactation period? It is the period of milk production after the birth of calf. Means when the birth of calf has taken place, so that period of the production of milk, that is called as lactation period. So the production of the milk, it depends upon this lactation period. And therefore, long lactation period is a desirable quality to consider during cattle farming. Okay, this lactation period is considered a desirable quality. So that was about lactation period. That's why exotic breeds means foreign breeds. And what are the examples of exotic breeds? Examples are Jersey and Brown Swiss. These are the exotic breeds which show long lactation periods. And what do you mean by local breeds? Local breeds are generally Indian breeds or indigenous breeds. Okay. And what are the examples of local breeds? The examples are Red Sindhi and Sahiwal. They show resistance to disease. Okay. Now what happens? Crossing is done between this exotic breed and local breed. Okay, the exotic breed, they show long lactation period and the local breeds, they show resistance to disease. That's why as a result of crossing, we obtain high quality of breeds. So that is one of the example given. Next point is about the shelter. In cattle farming, the cattle shelter should be well ventilated, hygienic and dry. Okay, you know that the cattle, they also require shelter. So that shelter, it should be hygienic, well maintained as well as dry. And along with this, animals require regular brushing. Why? In order to remove the dirt and the loose hair which are present on the surface of their body. So this was about cattle shelter. Next point is about cattle food. What type of food should be given to the cattle? Cattle food should include roughage as well as concentrates in balanced amount. Okay, and why they are required? They are required for the healthy maintenance as well as the milk production of the cattle. Besides such nutritious food material, certain feed additives containing micronutrients promote the health as well as the milk output of dairy animals. What do you mean by this? We are providing roughage as well as concentrates in balanced amounts to the cattle. Okay, so beside this nutritious food which we are providing, we can also provide certain feed additives which are rich in micronutrients. Now the question arises, in what way those certain feed additives which are rich in micronutrients, they will help. These additives, they will actually help in promoting the health as well as the milk output of the dairy animals. Okay, so this was about cattle food. Next point comes about the disease. You know that human beings suffer from various diseases. Similarly, cattle also suffer from a number of diseases. And these diseases, they are caused by various microorganisms. What are those? Like bacteria, viruses, external parasites and internal parasites. These are responsible for causing the disease in cattle. Now, students, let us study in detail about external parasites and internal parasites. The external parasites, they live on skin. Okay, and that's why they cause skin disease. And on the other hand, the internal parasites. What are the examples of internal parasite? The first example is worms. They affect the stomach as well as intestine. And what is the second example of internal parasite? Fluke. It damages the liver. So, whether the parasite is external or internal, it is affecting the health as well as the production of animals. Okay, now a question arises how it can be controlled. How the disease they can be controlled. The only solution to this problem is vaccination. By providing vaccines, these diseases they can be controlled at a large rate. So this was about cattle farming. Now proceeding to our next topic, that is poultry farming. What do you mean by poultry farming? Basically, this poultry farming, it is involved in raising the domestic fowls for the production of eggs as well as the production of meat. Okay, this poultry farming, it targets the egg production and meat production. Now, there are certain terms, layers and broilers. What do you mean by layers and broilers? The poultry birds which are raised for the production of eggs, they are called as layers. Okay, layers are related to egg production. And the poultry animals raised for meat production, they are called as broilers. Okay, the broilers are related to meat production. Now, crossbreeding is done between Indian breed and foreign breed. I told you in cattle farming also, the crossbreeding was taking place between exotic and Indian breed. Similarly, the crossbreeding is taking place between Indian or indigenous and foreign. Foreign means exotic. And what are the examples of Indian breed? Aseel, and foreign breed, that is leghorn. So crossing occurs between these two breeds so as to obtain new varieties containing following desirable traits. Means when the crossing has taken place, so the new variety which is obtained as a result of crossing, it contains the following desirable traits. Traits means characteristics. So what are those traits? Number one, number and quality of chicks. Number two, dwarf broiler parent. Number three, tolerance to high temperature. And number four, low maintenance requirements. And number five, reduction in size of the broilers. So these are the following traits which are obtained in the new variety as a result of cross breeding in case of poultry farming. So are you clear about this? Now, next comes about the requirements of the food. Means what type of food is required for the broilers and layers. Broilers means related to meat production and layers means related to egg production. Broilers chickens are fed with vitamin-rich supplementary food, vitamin A and vitamin K for good growth rate and better feed efficiency. They are also fed with protein-rich diet with adequate fat. Okay, the broilers chickens, they need vitamin A and K plus protein-rich diet with adequate amount of fat. So this is the food requirement for broiler chickens. And in case of layers, what do they require? Layers need restricted and calculated feed with vitamins, minerals and micronutrients. Okay, their feed is restricted or limited. So this was the difference between the food requirements for the broilers and layers. Now coming about the shelter. The poultry shelter should be hygienic, well lighted and maintained at appropriate temperatures. Okay, this was the same condition that I discussed in cattle farming. That the shelter should be dry, hygienic, well maintained, well ventilated. Okay, so this is the common thing in poultry farming as well as in cattle farming. Next point is about the disease. Poultry birds are needed to be protected from various disease. Okay, as I discussed right now that cattle they suffer from a number of disease. Similarly, poultry birds they also suffer from various disease. And these disease they are caused by bacteria, fungi, viruses, are parasites. Parasites, they may be internal parasite or external parasite, or they may be caused due to nutritional deficiency. Okay, whenever there is any deficiency in the nutrient requirement, the poultry birds, they suffer from disease. Now the question arises, how these disease in the poultry birds can be controlled or treated. So it involves proper treatment, sanitation and vaccination. Okay, by having proper treatment of that disease which the poultry bird is suffering, or providing sanitation facility and providing vaccination. These measures can be adopted or employed for controlling the disease in case of poultry birds. So what is your homework for today's lecture? You will have to do the following questions in your notebook. Question number 1 is, which method is commonly used to improve cattle breeds and why? Question number 2 is, what are the benefits of cattle farming? Question number 3 is, what management practices are common in dairy and poultry farming? And the last question, question number 4, what are the differences between broilers and layers and in their management? So these are the following questions you have to do in your notebook. So moving ahead to our homework solutions of lecture number 4. So you can match your answers and correct if any error. Question number 1 was, why should preventive measures and biological control methods be preferred for protecting crops? Answer, preventive measures and biological control methods should be preferred for protecting crops because of the following reasons. First, they are environment friendly. Second, they are more economical. Third, they minimize the pollution without affecting the soil quality. Fourth, they do not harm other forms of life and maintain a balance in ecosystem. So these are the following reasons for which the preventive measures and biological control methods should be preferred for protecting the crop. Question number 2 was, what factors may be responsible for losses of grains during storage? Answer, the factors responsible for losses of grains during storage are as follows. Number 1, biotic factors. Number 2, abiotic factors. Biotic factors include insects, rodents, fungi, mites and bacteria. Whereas abiotic factors include inappropriate temperature, humidity and moisture. So these are the factors which are responsible for losses of grains during storage. So this was about today's lecture. Keep learning side by side. Thank you, class.